Thank you. It's putting lives at risk. It's criminal and it's costing taxpayers money. That's the message the Brown County Sheriff's Office would like to send to whomever is sawing off and stealing traffic signs in the southern part of the county. In a First Alert update, Brittany Schmidt joins us now in studio after talking to authorities about their plea for some help. Brittany.
Bill, it started with a quick post on social media this morning. That's where the Brown County Sheriff's Office is hoping to reach as many people as possible to not only warn them of this type of theft, but also to get this type of criminal activity to stop. We drove out to two intersections near the town of Morrison today. These photos shared with us of a sawed-off stop sign near the intersection of County NN and Mill Road. Tell the Brown County Sheriff's Office all they need to know that this is no accident. And the concerning part is our GPS shows the speed limit is 55 miles per hour along this road where traffic doesn't have to stop. A similar scene here at the intersection of Glenmore and School Road where it's 45 miles per hour. In total, Captain Jody Lemon says they are aware of at least 5 signs being damaged in the month of December. She calls this kind of activity a tragedy waiting to happen.
Obviously, it becomes a big concern. You know, we talk about the foggy weather and stuff. If those signs are reflective in nature, and we had a lot of people that were traveling roads that they're maybe not as familiar with, you know, visiting friends and family, and you know, if they miss a stop sign or miss a T intersection sign, it could be very dangerous. So it really rose to catch our attention and try to do something to identify who's responsible for this and get it corrected.
Now, this isn't the first time we are hearing about thieves cutting down and stealing stop signs. We first told you in March about a string of incidents in the town of Glenmore. That town is just about 10 minutes from Morrison. So could these incidents all be connected? We'll look into that tonight on Action 2 News at 6. Bill?